This is More Law on Fox 19.
Thanks for joining us for More Law. Today's topic, divorce and child custody. And as always, we are taking your calls live on the air. Of course, it's not a pleasant subject, but you need to know what your rights are. There are many issues. How long a divorce takes, how child custody works, child support, the list goes on. If you have questions about divorce, custody, child support, or another family law issue, give us a call at 513-421-4691. Here with me, of course, Don Moore. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How about you, Deb?
Good. Good. Y'all ready for Thanksgiving?
Well, yeah, pretty much. We're gonna head down to a family thing. We're gonna drive about 650 miles down I-75, right in all the traffic. Oh boy.
I'm just going to drive 20 miles down to the Turkey Day 10K and then head home and cook a turkey.
Yours sounds like a more healthy alternative.
Well, I figure I might as well get it out of the way. One of my kids, my older son, runs with me, and they get that done with, and then you go home, and then you can turkey and stuffing all you want.
That's exactly right. Very good. Listen, we have a great show today. Ellen Ritkers, welcome.
Welcome back.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, Ellen has been practicing for over 30 years. She does domestic child custody and support. She is a past president of the Warren County Bar Association, so having Ellen here was a real pleasure before, and it is again today.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for asking me.
Let's start off with something, when people come to you, what do you suggest they have ready? If somebody is thinking about filing for divorce, should they come with a list of all the family assets, or how should somebody prepare?
Every attorney has a different approach. Mine is to come with a clear head, because the lawyer will guide the client in terms of information. And so as long as they have a clear head and can identify employers, brokerage firms, bank accounts, so that the lawyer can then do his or her work, that's the best way to approach it.
Okay. And I think you had a question you wanted to start real quick with.
Yeah, I did actually. One of the things you hear about from time to time is in cases where people have a violent spouse, they will get a restraining order. And so my question for you is, does that really protect a person?
Don, a restraining order is a piece of paper. And so that, in a nutshell, answers the question. And you mentioned violent spouses. It doesn't have to be a historically violent spouse. I've been practicing for 33 years, and 3 of my clients are dead at the hands of a spouse. Not all women. One was a male, and one of them had just obtained a restraining order on Friday afternoon before the courthouse closed, and she was killed on Sunday.
My goodness, that is so sad.
So what's the recourse? I mean, what can you do? I mean, sort of going into hiding.
Well, and I tell clients, if you feel you need a protection order or a restraining order, that's a good first step. But then practical considerations have to prevail. You have to be aware, as you would be anywhere in the world. Just be aware and take precautions.
Okay. All right. Let's head to the phones now. Let's see. We'll start off with Margaret in Blue Ash. Good morning, Margaret.
Good morning. Yes, I was just wondering, I just went through a divorce, and my ex-husband isn't a U.S. citizen, and he got custody of my son, and I was just wondering how he did that when he has domestic violence on him in California and here in Cincinnati.
I would imagine that's always a complex issue.
It's a complex issue, and the courts are guided in Ohio by a standard of best interest, and every question they answer in determining custody leads back to that ultimate question: what, based on all of the circumstances, is best for the children? And a parent's conduct unrelated to the children is not always it doesn't always correlate, or it's not always particularly relevant to the finding. And if you see a lawyer, there are ways, perhaps, to modify it going forward, should there be a change in circumstance.
Okay.
So the bottom line is, what I heard you say a second ago, which I think is kind of surprising and a little interesting, is that a person may be very violent, but if it's not directly at the kids or in front of the kids, they still could wind up with custody.
Absolutely. Violence to a spouse doesn't necessarily connect to anticipated or projected violence to a child.
Wow, I'll bet that's controversial.
It's hard for parents to accept that, understandably.
I'm sure. Okay, let's head now to Kim in Western Hills. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi, I have a question. I have a court case pending against me for child support from my ex-husband, and he moved to Kentucky. The two minor children are in Cincinnati, and I was wondering if there's... Hi, I have a question about a child support case.
Yes?
Yes, we
Okay,
heard.
We heard every word you've said so far.
Yes.
I have a child support case pending against me, and my ex-husband took off and left to go to Kentucky. I'm getting ready to go to jail over this case. He has custody of the kids, but the kids are not in his care. Is there anything that I can do about this?
Yes. I hope you have a lawyer, because if he has custody, he has that right to file for child support. But one of your defenses, if you will be that he's not actually providing the support for the children. So that's definitely an issue that will be used by the court in determining whether you owe him or a third party child support.
Is there such a thing as a case like a divorce or dissolution that people should attempt to do without a lawyer?
Well, my advice is never go completely without a lawyer. You don't have to have a lawyer all in, as they say, but at least have any document you plan to sign reviewed by a lawyer for you so that you understand what you're signing. Contracts can, on their face, look very clear, but there's language and there are provisions that might have very important repercussions going forward that you would have no reason to be aware of.
So it's just too complicated for a person to try by themselves entirely?
Much too complicated.
Okay, thank you.
And on that note, we'll take a break. We'll be back talking about divorce and child custody. Give us a call, 513-421-4691.
Welcome back to More Law on Fox 19, your legal questions live, with local broadcaster and award-winning reporter Deb Haas and Cincinnati personal injury attorney Don Moore, recognized by Ohio Super Lawyers. More answers, more help, more law on Fox 19.
Welcome back. We take you now to More Law Connection, where attorney Dan Moore is answering viewer emails. Good morning, Dan.
Hey, Deb. I want to say hi this morning to Tony and Hope at the Millvale Community Center. I was out there this weekend. But let's get to the questions. We have a question this morning regarding airbags. We have someone who calls in or writes in and says, I rear-ended someone, but my airbag didn't deploy like it should have. I found out that the airbag had been replaced once before I bought the car. Do I have any recourse to make sure my car is safe? Well, this is one of those cases where you have a legal, technical avenue, and you have what you should do, but that takes you down a different avenue. The legal, technical answer is you have a claim against the person who installed the airbag incorrectly. Whether you should pursue the claim is a whole other matter. These cases are very expensive, oftentimes costing several $100,000 to pursue. You have to find experts to testify why the airbag didn't deploy. You have to have them testify why it should have deployed in this case, why it was installed incorrectly. These are things that are very expensive to prove, and unless you have substantial injury or substantial property damage, it's usually not worth it to pursue the case. You can, however, approach the installer informally and ask them to fix this. You can ask them to pay you the money for what it takes to fix it. If that doesn't work, my recommendation, though, is not to pursue it. Deb?
All right, thanks a lot, Dan. We are back talking about divorce and child custody with our guest, Ellen Ritkers. Thanks again for joining us.
Glad to be back.
Okay,
We're glad you're here.
Yes, we are, because I couldn't answer all these questions myself. Let's go to the phones. We have Pamela in Amberley Village. Pamela, as I understand it, your question is about child support.
Yes.
Please go right ahead.
When a child is being taken care of, why does a person have to pay child support before it's determined who gets custody of the child?
Well, it sounds like there may be a temporary order which will be modifiable. The premise would be that one person, or two sometimes, depending upon the court you're in, would have parenting, and then a custody order would be put in place after that.
Okay. All right, let's go to Priscilla in Harrison. Good morning, Priscilla.
Good morning. Yeah, I have a question. My husband, he was never married to her, but he had a case open in the state before she ended up leaving the state and going to Pennsylvania. Here recently, she had gotten in trouble for stabbing her husband, and the child has called and said he's living with his grandmother up there, and he doesn't want to go home. Well, everybody we talk to says we have to get in touch with somebody in Pennsylvania when there's an open case in Ohio.
That may or may not be what you have to do. I hope that you've talked to lawyers who practice custody law in Ohio, because he or she will be able to tell you whether there is an exception to the rule that the case be brought in Pennsylvania. There are very few exceptions, but there are some. A good starting point is to start with an Ohio lawyer who will then connect you with a Pennsylvania lawyer, and they can work in conjunction with one another.
Okay, hope that's helpful, Priscilla. We are going to go back now to Dan Moore with another email question. Dan?
Okay, our second question this morning is from Nick, and he says, I'm a teenager and have been in foster care most of my life due to poor choices made by my parents. Can I divorce my parents in Ohio? Easy for me to say. Unpleasant topic, but it's one of these technical legal concepts. It's called emancipation in Ohio. And you really don't have a set procedure to accomplish this outside of a formal custody situation. In other words, typically this arises when parents are disputing who should get custody, and the kid says, hey, I want to be on my own. When that happens, the judge takes a look at what's best for the kid. We've talked about that this morning a little bit. And the judge is going to say, can the kid support themselves? Can the kid do what is necessary to maintain a household on their own? If they can, the judge very well may grant it. But to raise an emancipation issue in Ohio separate and apart from that, that doesn't happen very often. I have talked to lawyers who have done that in a juvenile circumstance, but it's just a highly unusual thing to do. Deb?
All right, thanks a lot, Dan. We'll take a break right now. We'll be back talking about divorce and child custody. Again, that phone number 513-421-4691.